What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Elite Thief here, and yes, my name has changed, and the reason why it's been changed to this as of now is because I would like to talk more about stealth mechanics in video games specific, because I believe that's what's going to be my main focus on games, particularly that those have type of stealth mechanics in them as well. And today we're going to be talking about Thief Deadly Shadows. I actually ended up reaching out to a YouTuber named Ermacgerd Longplays or Gameplays or whatever it's called, and shout out to him, and I really thank you very much for letting me do this. I greatly appreciate it, and I've been wanting to do this for quite some time because I'm a huge fan of when it comes to these games or stealth games in general, and hence the reason why I'm making this video. This is going to be a little bit of a longer, extensive look into this game overall with its stealth mechanics and vice versa. You know, talking about basically around what this game entails or entitles of what its mechanics do to make it more of a very popular immersive sim game series as they are as a whole, like Thief Deadly Shadows and Thief 2 the Metal Age, and Thief the Dark Project back in 1998. So now what I really would like to talk about here specific is basically I want to talk a little bit about, like the design. I think the design is one of the most not one of the most dominant things when it comes to the original Thief franchise. And it's really interesting of how this game really works in terms of that kind of colorful standpoint. Now, basically, Thief Deadly Shadows is basically one of the most considered defining game of the Thief series, with its technical refinement of what it does in terms of its lighting, music, and sound effects, gameplay, and level design. I think it's one of the best I've seen, especially in the Thief series. But other than that, I think Thief 2, the Metal Age, and Thief the Dark Project really did a great job of its steampunk overall settings of those first two games. And it's one of the reasons why I think these games are mostly vastly popular amongst other immersive sim games out there, like Prey 2017, Deus Ex, Arx Fatalis back in 2004 on the original Xbox. And another thing what really Thief Deadly Shadows does very well as well is what the 3D graphics was able to do for it being a little bit more realistic and immersive, unique type of way, and along with its visual effects. And I think that's another thing that really made the game a lot more realistic from that of what, to a certain standpoint, in the video game genre as this game as a whole as well. And I think that's what makes it so cool and immersive, and how the gameplay mechanics are implemented within this type of stealth series in general. And I think Thief Deadly Shadows is, I don't think it's not as good as the original two games were, but overall I do really think that Deadly Shadows did a much better job in terms of its shadow mechanics and its stealth mechanics, and how you can achieve certain things or to do certain things with each level design of Thief Deadly Shadows. And I think that's what's really cool about it as well. Let's see. What I will say is that they did a little bit some motion capture as well. They also did some character animation with some lip sync involved, and I think that's another thing. That's why they did Thief Deadly Shadows so differently from that of the original two, because I don't think that they had any type of motion capture back in that time because of the technology restraints. But that thoroughly makes sense, and I really think, and I think that's why I think Thief Deadly Shadows is more regarded of what it did in terms of that gameplay mechanics as well, being able to have that motion capture and vice versa. And another thing, though, too, is that this was actually one of the most fully 3D animated interfaces span in the game, other than even when it's not in missions. There is a place called the City, which is basically going to be the main hub of Thief Deadly Shadows, and that's another thing that that this game does so differently from that of the original 2 back on PC. Now, another thing that I think what really made Thief Deadly Shadows very unique from that of the original 2 as well, back on PC, you were able to switch between first-person and third-person perspectives, or you can switch back and forth during any type of gameplay element at your leisure or your convenience, and I think that's really cool as well. Some people have overall thought that playing a third-person viewpoint makes the game a little bit easier to play because you are able to look around your surroundings a lot better and more to a more visual standpoint, and having that perspective of things. Your camera, you were able to see all around you rather than just playing it first-person mode, and that makes sense. It totally makes sense, and I think that's another good way of having some really good immersive gameplay when it came to that type of mechanic. Now, I won't talk about the story in this game because I feel like that, like I mentioned before in my previous videos that I had made, like Parade 2017 or other games I might have possibly done, I don't remember, but like I said, I'm not going to talk about that. Let's see. Another thing I will mention is... Like the Widow Moira has more than just meat. Oh yeah, I kind of want to talk a little bit about, not just with the gameplay mechanics, but I want to talk about more on the lines with, what kind of usage that you use, especially when you play as Garrett. He is a master thief, and he is able to stay in the shadows and basically just use those shadows as he sees fit in order to maintain a proper balance of staying hidden. And that's basically the core gameplay of all 3 Thief games, and I think that's another reason why this Thief series is so well loved and amongst fans of old or new. So that totally makes sense. They have broadhead arrows, they have water arrows, which you can be able to extinguish flames within the world of the Thief games, especially in the first 2 as well back in PC. That's really cool. They have moss arrows to where you can be able to, put them down on some noisy flooring, whether if it's marble, glass, or anything. That's really cool as well. I think that's another thing. Let's see. I think another thing that they did really well with the healing potions are remaining the same, but they are more different now in Deadly Shadows because they look more like crystals, which is really cool. I think it's just very interesting of how they did some different mechanic in terms of that. You only get to carry 10 maximum health vials, basically, or health potions. Now, the lockpicks or the lockpicking in this game is very fickle. And what I mean by that, it still feels the samey mechanic from that of the original 2, but it's not as robust, I would say, like they were in the first 2 original games, but overall they were still really good, in my opinion. I played the crap out of Thief Deadly Shadows, and I played a lot of the original 2 on PC, and I love this series. I had so much praise for it. Now, one thing I will say is that they did some notable changes within Thief Deadly Shadows that makes it feel different, other than it is a Thief game. It is not a reboot. It is somewhat of a continuation from that of Thief 2, The Metal Age, as far as I know. But it's been such a long time since I've played those games, I really can't say if that's true or not. So bear with me. Now, with Thief Deadly Shadows, what they did was they actually ended up giving you climbing gloves rather than rope arrows. That's the only difference that they did in terms of the gameplay aesthetic of, you know, going up to specific heights in the game. And that's what another thing that really made the game very different and unique at the same time of, you know, when it came to the climbing mechanics. However, in the first Thief Deadly Shadows, excuse me, in the first game, Thief the Dark Project, when Garrett actually ended up getting his eye torn out by Victoria, Garrett actually ended up acquiring a artifact known as the Eye. And as far as I know, Garrett was able to have a metal eye embroidered within his empty eye socket, is using that as at his advantage to look around a little bit better than your normal seeing eye, of course. And I think that's another thing that's what's really cool. Let's see what I will say. Let's go back here. Yes, I am paraphrasing a lot from what I'm getting off the internet here. That's why I'm doing a little bit more in-depth about this game overall. And I will stop doing this at some point, and then I will be talking more extensively about this game as well. So, let's see here. I kind of want to go back and talk about the visuals a little bit more here. Let's see. It's like the previous Thief games, the storyline was primarily revolved a major incident, which is in the final and dramatic activation of the final glyph. This game is based upon the final glyph to where it's a powerful magic object to ever be revealed in a Thief series. And, you know, the original Thief series didn't really have that per se. The stories in those games were very different from that of Thief Deadly Shadows. And I think that's another reason why I think Thief Deadly Shadows is more unique in terms of that type of story thing or story element to it. So, my bad on that. They actually they actually had different types of factions with the game as well. They were varied in this game, and they are known as the Keepers, the Hemorrhites, the Pagans, and the Kershak. And in the previous Thief games, the storyline primarily revolves a major incident. You know, I've already mentioned that before, so my bad. I'm just trying to paraphrase as much as I can so that way I don't get into deep trouble here, which is a good thing. Actually, let's go a little... How about we go a little bit in depth on Garrett here, which is basically the main protagonist that you play as in the original Thief games. And, you know, just give a brief synopsis of what this is. Basically, Garrett is the protagonist and master thief. He has extensive training from ancient sect known as the Keepers. The Keepers actually ended up making him a little bit of a homebody, as it were, and then he actually ended up getting the mechanical eye given to him by the Hemorrhites, so that he has the natural, after his natural eye was, like I said, was plucked out by Constantine, not Victoria, so my bad on that, which is known as the Trickster, and also the Woodsy Lord known to the Pagans. So that's quite interesting. I like it. It's very interesting how that came to be and how it came to pass. The Keepers, like I say, you know, they are a sect in the game series, and especially in Thief Deadly Shadows, Orland is the keeper of all the order of the Keepers, and basically he betrays Garrett and he sends upon the Watch, I believe it was, and they were actually ended up going to try to catch Garrett, so that way Orlin can convict him and send him to Pavlok prison for life, as far as I know. And I mean, that's true, because I totally remember that now. The antagonist was known as the Hag. She was a character within the game she was another one of the, not really the protagonist that you play as, but she was an antagonist. And she was one of the antagonists that was actually ended up being seen by Inspector Drept. Inspector Drept was known as not a keeper, but he was a Hammerite. And he actually ended up finding out who the Hag was, and the Hag ended up being a trickster of sorts, like the trickster known as the Woodsy Lord from the Hammerites. And then that was very interesting of how that came to pass as well. Now, there was another character in this game called Translator Gamal. Translator Gamal was actually able to be... She was not who she says she was. She was basically under the guise of the Hag. The Hag was able to take form of Gamal, and that's another thing that what made the game so interesting in the story aspect and the concept of it. I think that's another thing. So that I actually thought that was interesting in how that came to be. And not only that, there was another human being called Laurel who was killed and skinned by the Hag, and after basically almost 10 years, of course, before the final glyph incident. So that's basically what the story is in a matter of retrospect, because I'm not like I'm saying, I'm not doing it word for word here from the Thief Deadly Shadows wiki. Like I said, I am paraphrasing as much as I can as possible. So like I said before, I'm not going to repeat myself. Let's see. Now, what I do want to say here is the blackjack. Obviously, it's going to be... Now, we're going to go back to the weapons here a little bit here. The blackjack is basically known as, knocking your enemies unconscious, being able to knock out your enemies and vice versa. So that way you can do everything quietly rather than having it doing all noisy. Basically, a la maybe Conan the Barbarian with a dagger. Now, I will say that they actually replaced the bow and arrow from the first two games in Thief Deadly Shadows, and Garrett only wields a dagger now. No, actually, the dagger was replaced by a sword. Pardon me. So that... it definitely made the game a little bit harder in terms of combat, but overall it was an interesting way of how you being able to dispatch. All right, now I'm going to actually go into a little bit of the developmental cycle here, a little bit, as much as I can. Let's see. Thief Deadly Shadows was basically simultaneously developed for Windows and for the original Xbox. And not only that, the game is basically powered with a heavily and tweaked version of Unreal Engine 2. Hence the reason why they did some really nice, good graphic fidelity for Thief Deadly Shadows with the lighting and its shadows, and how the lighting was able to go through windows, and being able to make shadows a little bit more for Garrett to hide in. That's what made it really cool. And not only that, it's basically from its predecessor. Now we're going to a little bit of the reception here. Is that Thief Deadly Shadows received almost universally positive reviews. I think that's a really good thing. But overall, it still I don't think it didn't really sell very well. But overall, IGN did give the game an Editor's Choice Award and Game of the Month for May 2004. That's when the game was initially released. Let's see. Another thing that I would say is that most of the professional reviewers out there praised its steampunkish artistry and its refined lighting system, and its, obviously, like I mentioned before, its graphical and its very unique level and visual design and sound effects and its music. That's another thing, and the way how it was immersive to those type of how it was going to work within the world of this game, and that's another thing that really made it good as well. But what really made it more stand out from that of the original 2 was the voice acting and its amazing gameplay, and I think that's another reason why this game was actually somewhat very critically acclaimed, and it's very well surprising because initially when Looking Glass Studios was a company back in the day that made the first 2 original Thief games on PC, which is now defunct, Ion Storm actually ended up picking up the project, and that company is no longer around either. That's now a defunct company. But Ion Storm and Eidos Interactive, and basically when Ion Storm picked up the project for Thief Deadly Shadows, it was finally into production from Eidos Interactive, and then basically the project ended up getting greenlit and ended up coming out in 2004. So, let's go back here one more time here. Now, another thing that they actually ended up doing some other different types of changes within Thief Deadly Shadows as well. I don't think I mentioned this, but after each individual single mission that you were able to do within Thief Deadly Shadows, you were able to go into different types of districts within the city, as free as you can go. I mean, it was pretty much like open freedom, and I think that's another great thing of why some people really greatly praise this game. Basically, another thing though too is like whenever you like steal gold or anything that glitters, obviously, because that's the premise of this game, you're able to go to black market or to fences and be able to sell off your stolen goods and be able to maintain a good efficiency of money, so that way you can be able to but you're able to buy different types of equipment like gas arrows, choke bombs, or that sort of thing. And I think that's another thing that really made it interesting of what the originals did as well. And I think that's what's really cool too, in my personal opinion. So basically, at every single level that you did, or mission structure within the game of Thief Deadly Shadows, if you did it on a certain type of difficulty, you were actually rewarded to achieve better loot at the end of each level, and basically such as they were known as artifacts, and I think that's another thing that were involved in the objectives and somewhat that of the story of the game itself. So that's pretty awesome. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about the story really, because like I said, I'm sure a lot of people already know what the story is to this game. I think yeah, that's another thing. I'm sorry. Another thing that I would say, there were, when Garrett finally was able to get his mechanical eye from Constantine, known as the Woodsy Lord from the Pagans and vice versa, he was actually able to use his metal eye for night vision. That apparently that was kind of I do remember pretty vaguely that he used it for night vision, and it helped him being able to know where he needed to go within the world. That's really cool. I love the way how he was able to just, and you're able to find out where, you know, you're able to find better certain things in the world better than just normal, going back to your normal vision. So that's kind of cool. Now, what I'm going to do now is that since we are now close to the end of this video, I'm actually going to be, that's pretty much all I have to talk about here. But overall, I really think that Thief Deadly Shadows did a really good job of everything what it did of its time, and I think that's another reason why I think Thief Deadly Shadows is one of the most not just interesting game of the original Thief game series, but overall, I think to me personally, I think it's literally one of the best ones I've played since the original. But I think the original games were very, very interesting and intricate of their own level system. You know, each level within Thief 2 or Thief the Dark Project, especially the Dark Project, each level was very intricate. It was robust, and it was so pleasantly designed. I love its designing systems of the first two games, and I think, but Thief Deadly Shadows didn't really have that type of level, you know, unique, vibrant level select or each level that you went through. But overall, I think still Thief Deadly Shadows still captures that. It still definitely captures that, you know, that steampunkish setting like the original 2 did. You know, like in the Victorian era, excuse me. And that's another thing. I think the reason why I think they went with the Victorian era in Thief Deadly Shadows is because it made more sense. And I think, but in Thief 2, the Metal Age and Thief the Dark Project, those games were very vastly different from any other stealth games. You know, like, you know, Tenchu Stealth Assassins or Metal Gear Solid or any other stealth games that you can come to mind. And that's another thing what makes the original Thief games so well loved and well critically acclaimed as well. But like I say, you know, with Looking Glass Studios being able to not be around anymore and Iron Storm not being around anymore, it just goes to show you that these companies did a lot of effort to make these games specific and in particular, and how popular they were from a lot of people. And I would have to say, I think my personal experience when it comes to the original Thief games and Deadly Shadows is that these games specific, you know, the Dark Project was one of the most influential stealth games ever created, other than it being an immersive sim as they are. But overall, you're still getting a good and unique, vibrant world. And it's not just about the world design, it's about its lighting structure, its missions, and how you can tackle them, and it's just so interesting of why these games are so amazing. And what I can say is that I think when it comes to games like this or any other games that have stealth implementation as well, it's not the same as what the Thief games did. I think the original Thief games did an amazing job of stealth in terms of, you know, like suspicion and evasion, you know, being able to know that if you're going to hear someone from long distance but they're actually almost pretty close to you, there's that sound mechanical system to where it's like if you're walking on tile, it's loud, but if you're walking on a carpet, it's soft and quiet. And that's another thing I will add, is that what the original Thief games as well is that they did a unique sound system. It was a unique soundscape system to where, particularly if you're, like I previously mentioned just now, it's like if you're walking on a piece of tile and you're making so much noise, and if you want to be able to douse that noise, you have to shoot moss arrows on that specific type of walkway. Like I said, whether if it's glass, marble, or tile, you can be able to douse those noises and being able to walk more softer. But however, if you're walking on carpet, like I said, it's going to be much quieter, and you're not going to have that high evasion. You're basically going to more into low profile. And what I will say is that Thief 2014 didn't have that. They really downgraded that to the highest extent, and it kind of really pissed me off, and I was not very happy about it. It was still a good game to its own unique way, but it's not as good for what the original franchise did. I think the original franchise did so many things better because those games were ahead of their time. Not because of the story, not because of its graphic fidelity back in the day, but like I said, it had to do with the fact it was the soundscape system that they used. And they have never been, I don't think I have never seen any other game achieve that type of sound system before, like the original Thief games. So I think that's another reason why I think the first two games they're amazing. They're awesome. Because I love that low and high evasion type of quality to it, to where if you're seeing. And you're basically kind of royally fucked. Because the combat in those games specific, even in Deadly Shadows, you can fight, but you're not always going to win. And basically what I'm saying is that when it comes to these Thief games in general, you're not always going to win. You will lose, because these games are not meant to be fighting with, or fighting in, should I say. They are more efficient to be more low profile rather than high profile when it comes to that evasion quality of that soundscape within these games. Now, I will say I think Thief Deadly Shadows did a really good job with the soundscape. It's a little dumbed down just a little bit, but they still did a great job of, pleasing the fans. They did a good job of knowing what they wanted to do in order to retain that same kind of focus of what the original Thief games do or did with that soundscape structure, and it did a good job. I would definitely say it did a really good job, and I loved the fact that what Deadly Shadows did in terms of different type of gameplay style, not gameplay styles, but gameplay aesthetic, in terms of using some better equipment to achieve certain areas so that way you will not get caught. And that's another thing. I think that's what makes Deadly Shadows, it did feel different from that of the original too, but overall I still think that it was still a really good game in general. And I think Ion Storm did a great job making this game. They did a great job of making it somewhat more realistic than from what the original two games did, because of the technology that we've had back in 2004 was better technology for Thief Deadly Shadows to achieve better visual and graphic fidelity. And because they used the Unreal Engine 2, they didn't use that engine within, I believe they didn't use that engine within the first two games on PC. And you got to understand, it's like that makes more sense to me, because like I said, those games are much older than from what Thief Deadly Shadows. But Thief Deadly Shadows is now old because it's 2004 and we are in 2023. So like I said, I'm giving a huge shout out to Ermacgerd Longplays, and I thank you very much for letting me do this. Greatly appreciated, because like I said, I've been wanting to make this video for quite some time, and I'm really glad I finally found the time to do so. So thank you, greatly appreciated. I will leave the link in the description below for his YouTube channel. By all means, check this guy out. He's really good for what he does. And it just goes to show you that there are a lot of people, there are some really good YouTubers out there that care about this gaming community. And I think that's the most important thing in life, especially even if you have a part-time job like I do, or full-time job or whatever, but you're making content for a YouTube channel that you feel like that you're not going to grow, but you never know. But I think the main thing is that it's good, important to know that you're always going to be in a good place. you know that if you keep on doing this and working at it and making the content you want to provide and love and having fun by doing it, I would say go for it, man, because you're not. I would just say it's like I'm not getting any younger. I'm getting older, and I just want to do what I love the most. And I'm very passionate when it comes to video games. I don't consider it as an obsession. It's what I love, and like I said, I'm passionate, and I really want to be able to just get my voice out there, and just hopefully people can be able to hear what I'm saying. So that's great. So, but anyways, this is Elite Thief here. Thank you for tuning in. Greatly appreciated. But if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to reply back if and whenever possible. And I hope everyone else has a great night. Have a good rest of your week. Peace.
I've stolen the compendium, but I can't read it any more than Captain Moira could. I'll have to bring it back to the Keepers. Besides, I want to see the look on their faces when I hand it over. They've been searching for years, and I found it in one night.